One of the important things which has stricken, I think you might also noticed, that have you find any smokers in our group now? Nobody has. I have not seen anybody going out and taking a nicotine break. That kind of shift has happened in any of the previously when we used to have conferences in the IICs and the Habitat Center. People used to go out, walk out, and they used to have nicotine breaks. And that break is not there, and that's a kind of cessation efforts, and that is yielding results. Now you won't be finding people who will be smoking. We have got a lot of results and encouragement in seeing the cessation of the smoking tobacco. It is very difficult to find people smoking nowadays because, as you have rightly mentioned, you have to instigate your anesthetist friend saying that you go out and this. Now it's not required. Most of the government institutions, they are smoke free institution. If you want to smoke, you have to go out of the institution and have to smoke. That kind of change has happened. I am not talking about the harms and the benefits of reduction in this. We have to have a balanced view. But if you look at the effects which the tobacco is having, tobacco and the nicotine products it is having, that's very immense. I am not talking about the economic impact, the direct cost and the indirect cost. There plenty. It goes into 1 lakh crores per year, the direct and the indirect cost. Are we ready to bear that thing? If we have not done something, 80% of the cancers are coming from your tobacco. Do we have enough tobacco? Last time also I mentioned that do we have enough beds to cater to the needs of the cancer patients? No. So prevention is the strategy. If we talk about harm reduction is not substitution. Harm reduction is how Dr. Pawan Gupta has mentioned that is harm reduction. We have to see that how we take it to the next level in following this kind of harm reduction strategies. Harm reduction is not substitution. That should be very, very clear. If you see, one of the Oceania nations, that is Australia and they are now saying that the tobacco you can only have on prescription basis. But we have to focus that how we reduce the accessibility to the tobacco. The school children, if you do a survey, last time also I mentioned that school children at the age of 10 years, 11 years, they would be having tobacco leaves in their pockets. You have to see that. Apart from that, Dr. Sunita ji has rightly mentioned, I was just discussing with few of the members, saying that you see how you have seen a sprung of the infertility clinics in tier 2, tier 3 cities. Previously, they were only restricted to tier 1 cities. The cost of infertility is very high. Apart from that, madam, it's quite valid thing. That means until you console that patient that it is affecting the sperm count, your fertility and your progeny, people will not do away with the consumption of the tobacco. Tobacco ban is required. It's not that the banning will result in loss of livelihood and other things. Though government is making efforts in the direction of crop diversification, you might have seen. When earlier this nicotine, that opium cultivation used to happen in the early 1900s. You see that the majority of the farmers were into this opium cultivation because that was a cash intensive crop. Once the regulation started happening, now you have regulated crop growing and only 2 centers that is processed, that is 2 districts they are processed. Though the grey market would be there for any of these such activities, grey market is already there. But you see, the issue, people say that if ban is there, what will happen to the farmers? But you see, when the crops were diversified, they could earn more than what they were earning when they were doing the opium cultivation. So efforts are to be made in that direction also. Apart from that, the people who are working in the agriculture fields, the green tobacco sickness is also there. People are not realizing that that sickness is also there. As Raheja ji has pointed out, it can affect from head to toe. We have to see that do we want that kind of person in our society? We have to follow the approaches. That's a small effort. And many such efforts would be there in the country. We have to make it as a Jan Andolan, taking clue from what Dr. Pawan Gupta ji is doing. That is harm reduction strategy from my perspective. And we have to see that how we make it as a people's movement so that people usually know the harm effects of this tobacco and they seize it. Cessation is the answer because I have been hearing, I'm just taking my personal example. My mother used to say that the father was a chain smoker. He used to, a cartoon of this cigarettes used to come. At that time, Charminar was the famous cigarette. And he used to consume around 3 packets of Charminar in a day. But I have never seen him smoking. Because he had a bet with his friend saying that I will quit smoking, and he has quit the smoking. It has to be abrupt like that. It cannot be saying that I would be having substitution of something else. There are many other examples also. People have quit smoking and this. I'm not talking about morality. If you want to do this, let the ban would be there. You see, the ban was there, cigarette smoking, we could not see. That kind of change will happen in the society. The harm reduction has to happen, what people have been doing, and we see that how we follow in that direction. One of the important thing is including the history taking. Sunita madam has rightly pointed out that when the ANC care is happening, we should take the history of tobacco consumption, because that thing right now in the operational guidelines is not there. We have to see that how it is built into the operational guidelines. That's the biggest takeaway for me from this interaction, that how to build that into the deliberations when our peripheral most workers are interacting with them. But we do have acts. The FSA's Act as the COPTA Act. COPTA is for the regulation of the cigarette and products, and the food and safety standards. It mentions that Kelani ji has rightly mentioned that it is taken as a food. Once it is interpreted as a food by the Honorable Court, that any form consumption of nicotine would not be acceptable, and you would be seeing a lot of bans and other things. That's a matter of the Honorable Courts to decide. But for the harm reduction, the strategy, we have the answer. It's not just only replacement. Replacement would be one of the methods, but the strategy which Dr. Madan Gopal ji has mentioned, at least we see that how it is take to the next level. I will stop here. Thank you very much.